If I said to you at the start of this season that Nottingham Forest were going to compete for a spot in the top 4, you probably would have laughed at me and called me names that I couldn't possibly repeat in a YouTube intro for monetization reasons. However, fast forward to February, here we are. Nottingham Forest are very much in the top 4, and they have got into this position by breaking the football meta. But what does that even mean? Let's take a look. Now, when I am talking about the football meta, I am talking about the strategy that teams have been using over the past few seasons to try and gain success. So that will very often include pressing high up the pitch, dominating possession and things like that. In fact, if we look at the top 4 teams from each of the past 3 seasons, every team has comfortably had over 50% of the ball. However, if we look at Nottingham Forest this season, they've had only 40% possession. This is what I'm talking about. They are finding success by going against the grain, by playing football in a very different way to every other team, or every other successful team, over the past few seasons. And it starts with the fact that they have literally no interest in applying pressure high up the pitch. They don't want to put you under pressure in these areas here. As you can see in the numbers, they don't make tackles in this position, but also not really particularly in the middle third of the pitch either. Again, in the numbers, you can see they don't want to tackle you here. They want to drop a lot deeper and get numbers behind the ball. Now, the first question that you will have is, why does this work for them? We have seen other teams try this in the Premier League. Other teams sit deeper. We have seen certain teams right now in the league forced to be passive, forced to play behind the ball, but it doesn't work for them. Why does it work for Nottingham Forest? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because they want to do it. They have literally been built for this. For starters, they've got a good solid goalkeeper. In front of the goalkeeper, they've got 2 very good box defending centre-backs, and then 2 full-backs who have the engine to get up and down the pitch. In midfield, they have 2 extremely underrated, but physical, combative central midfielders. And then in front of them, you've got a line of 3 players that are some of the best ball carriers in transition in the Premier League. And then, of course, up front, you've got Chris Wood, seemingly one of the best strikers in the world at the moment, scoring goals for fun. This Nottingham Forest side isn't forced to drop deep, they're choosing to do it because they know when they play like this, they're better than pretty much everyone. So now the important question, how does this actually work? I've sat and told you that Nottingham Forest are very good from a defensive point of view, but I haven't told you how they do it. Well, interestingly, they use a 4-2-3-1 shape, but what's interesting here is that it remains that shape. A lot of teams will often kind of collapse back into a back 5 or something like that. Forest don't tend to do it, certainly not in this phase. Whilst they are a defensive team, they don't literally line up on the edge of their own penalty area and wait for you. They actually engage closer to the halfway line, but they do this in an interesting way. You see, the player on the ball, as we can see on the screen here, will very often have time. The problem is for that player, he doesn't actually have anyone to pass to. So let's say this player here picks up possession, he looks forward, he will have time on the ball, he'll be able to get his head up, but he won't have anyone to pass to because Hudson-Odoi will be cutting the passing lane out wide, Anderson will be cutting the passing lane into midfield, Gibbs-White will also be doing something similar, and also Chris Wood. Sometimes Chris Wood will block the pass to the other centre-back to completely isolate this defender, or sometimes he will block the progressive pass into midfield if Forest are trying to be a little bit more conservative. And we saw some really good examples of this the other month against Liverpool. You can see Konate on the ball here. Now, Konate is a really good ball player, so to give him time would normally be a problem. But it's not, because he may have time, he has no one to pass to. Initially, if you look at these guys, they don't really look like they're doing too much. But what's actually important is where they're looking. They are looking for the Liverpool players, so they can move themselves into these positions where Konate has no option. Where is he meant to pass? Hudson-Odoi has blocked this passing lane here, Morgan Gibbs-White has blocked this pass, and Chris Wood has blocked the pass to the other centre-back. Konate has no progressive option. However, he is desperate to progress. He wants to move the ball forward, so eventually he resorts to lumping the ball forward. Nottingham Forest get the first contact nice and easily and regain possession. You can see it again here. Chris Wood initially moving back into a deeper position. However, at the last moment, he realises that instead he wants to cut the pass to Van Dijk. So Konate has literally no option on the ball. So what Chris Wood does is he just moves a little bit to his right hand side. He just shifts over towards this side and blocks this passing lane here. So Konate can't go backwards, but also he can't go into midfield. There is no passing option forward for Konate. He has taken a risk, he is moving forward, which we'll come back to shortly, but there is no passing option for him, apart from going out wide, where once again Forest are able to overturn possession, win the ball back, and then counter-attack. We also saw this in the game against Manchester United. Again, Chris Wood cutting passing lanes into midfield, but the rest of them doing the same as well. Hudson-Odoi at the bottom there, preventing the pass forward. Again, you can see what Forest are trying to do. The player on the ball has all the time in the world, but who is he meant to pass to? He can't actually move the ball forward. This is Nottingham Forest setting up really good traps. Now, whilst Forest may be good at setting up these traps and cutting the passing lanes, you're never going to be perfect. At the end of the day, it's a team of humans who are prone to mistakes, and are playing against other players in the Premier League that are high quality. So there will be moments where the opposition can move the ball forward. What is really interesting here, though, is, depending on the game state of course, Nottingham Forest don't actually retreat all the way into a low block. What we would normally expect here is that the wingers then double up with the fullbacks and sit really deep, especially if we're talking about a defensive team. But Forest don't do that, they leave those guys there, which we'll come back to shortly. The reason they are able to do this though, is because they've got such a good defensive solid base here. I spoke about it right at the start of the video. Anderson and Yates, really underrated in the middle of the park. They're both big, strong, physical, they win a lot of their battles, they work really hard, and realistically Yates is the heartbeat of this team. He sort of sets the standard for everyone else around him. So these guys can stay a little bit higher up the pitch because these six are going to do such a great job defensively. And sometimes, you know, that will involve dropping all the way into a 6, particularly if Forest are trying to protect the lead and the opposition have got the ball out wide. If Forest need to, they will drop literally everyone into the box and then trust their ability to defend these situations. Murillo and Milinkovic have had really good seasons at the back, two very strong centre-backs, good enough in the air and good at reading the play, good at intercepting and basically putting their bodies on the line like proper old-fashioned defenders, and it works really well for Forest because it means that they can drop and collapse into these positions here. You can see all of these players in the box now protecting the lead, although there's actually not the forwards still dropping deep, which we'll come back to in a second. But as a result, they're able to delay the opposition. If we take Curtis Jones here, he kind of picks up the ball but has nowhere to go. He sort of stutters. There's nowhere for him. No forward pass here because Forest have got so many players in the box, and eventually Liverpool get forced to play backwards. And Forest, you can see, again, so many players between the ball and goal, it's almost impossible to break them down. Now, as we move on to the next segment, this is where this all starts to make sense and sort of tie in together. Nottingham Forest are so good defensively, right? And it's the fact that they are so good defensively which makes them so good going forward. You see, you've got these 6 players that are going to sit deep and do all of the defensive work. They're going to win headers into the box, they're going to put their bodies on the line, clear the ball, scrap people, fight people if they have to, foul people a lot of the time as well. They're going to restrict access for the opposition. This means that the front 4 can play a little bit higher. So what is the cause and effect of this, right? What happens when Forest play in this way? Well, we have already seen, and we've got to rewind a little bit here, the opposition trying to move the ball forward from this position. They very often have time on the ball, but they don't have a forward pass, right? Forest were blocking the passing lanes. So this player on the ball starts to take risks. He carries the ball forward himself and has a little adventure. It might be the centre-back, or it could also be the full-back, getting a little bit brave, a little bit adventurous, taking the ball forward. But because very often they don't actually have a passing option, often the opposition are forced to turn the ball over. This is where Forest are then so dangerous, because the opposition have committed extra men forward, but Forest are actually keeping 4 reasonably high up the pitch. And then we are talking about Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi and Elanga. We've got pace, we've got trickery, we've got dribbling, we've got ball carrying, and genuine power, particularly in the middle of the pitch, to really drive at the heart of the opposition. Remember, an opposition that has committed extra men forward because the Forest defence is so good. So because Forest are so good defensively, the opposition take more risks. And because the opposition take more risks, Forest are now better from an attacking point of view. Is it starting to make sense now? This is why Forest are so good to watch. You can see it here in the game against Wolves. Wolves are starting to be a bit more adventurous, gamble down the right-hand side because they're struggling to break down the block from Forest, right? Lots of players behind the ball. It's difficult to play through. Eventually, though, Wolves are going to kind of resort to a hopeful long ball, which Nottingham Forest win. Nottingham Forest win the contact, duelling, battling, winning the ball in the middle of the park, and then all these Wolves players are caught high up the pitch, and Forest can transition. Look at the space. Wolves have pushed players forward to try and overwhelm Forest, but because Forest are so strong defensively, they win the ball back anyway, get the ball forward, and now we can see the 4 attackers are ready to go. You can see all 4 of them perfectly in a line here, ready to attack, ready to spring forward and get at the opposition defence. You've got runners off the ball on either side, runners with the ball in the middle, and good selfless combination play from the likes of Gibbs-White, Elanga, Hudson-Odoi, Wood, the substitutes as well. They all combine really well in these moments, and it makes them absolutely lethal. And of course, they also have that bloke up front called Chris Wood, who is performing just ridiculously well this season. It is one of the best one-off seasons I've ever seen. Is it going to be a one-off? I don't know. The XG numbers are absolutely phenomenal. The rate at which this guy is overperforming is kind of nuts. It's going to be interesting to see if he can keep that up, not only for the rest of the season, but also next season as well. But right now, Nottingham Forest are so good defensively and then lethal in the counter-attack. But not only are they lethal in the counter-attack themselves, they're also really good at defending the counter-attacks. They'll counter you, but you can't counter them. Why is that? Well, because when they do counterattack, they may throw these 4 forward at an alarmingly quick pace. They throw them forward, they chuck them forward, they drive at you, they burn you on the counterattack. Sometimes, though, they're going to get it wrong, because again, they're humans, they make mistakes, they're not perfect. Sometimes they're going to lose the ball. But the thing is, Forest have only sent 4 forward. They've only sent 4 forward for the transition most of the time. Don't get me wrong, Anderson will sometimes join in, or Aina as well, or Williams. Occasionally, we will see extra players. But a lot of the time, it's 4, maybe 5 playing in the transition. So should Forest then lose the ball, and the opposition try and counter-attack back, Forest already have all of these players back ready to defend. My absolute favourite example of this came against Liverpool last month, and the reason this is my favourite example is because Nottingham Forest actually picked the ball up and are ready to transition. They are ready to attack. Liverpool are a little bit vulnerable. Forest have the chance to go forward, and this is on the 78th minute at 1-1. If Forest could nick a goal here, it changes the title race, and Forest decide to go for it. They decide to pick the ball up and try and attack Liverpool. Morgan Gibbs-White carries the ball forward. He's brilliant at doing this. We love watching him in this way. But unfortunately, eventually it goes wrong. Hudson-Odoi picks the ball up, but loses possession. This is an issue. This is an issue. We can see actually on this occasion Forest have pushed 5 forward instead of the 4. They could be in trouble here. Liverpool are on the counter-attack. They are in transition. This is what Forest need. That desire, that work rate. Head down, 78th minute, and just run. And you can always tell when a player's working that little bit harder with a sprint. We've probably all done it ourselves. When you sort of put your head down and really lock in to cover those yards, to try and get back for your team, you're really battling here to try and do this. This is what Forest are all about. But also, even if the midfielders can't get back, there's already 4 defenders at the back anyway. There is already 4 players at the back. So Liverpool are counter-attacking here and are already outnumbered because Forest have so many players back ready to defend because they didn't chuck them all forward for the counter-attack because they know their front 4 are so good. And eventually, as Liverpool eventually get the ball towards the edge of the penalty area, Forest already have 6 players back here. 6 players ready to defend. Even Chris Wood is busting a gut to try and get back and help his team out in this situation. And eventually you get the first clearance in the box here. You then get a second clearance in the box here. You then get the aerial duel. And then eventually someone has just got to put their foot through it and absolutely smash the ball up the pitch. This is what Nottingham Forest are all about. So just to sort of try and sum that up for you, the reason that Nottingham Forest are so good is because they let the opposition have the ball, they cut the passing lanes, they leave their front 4 fairly high, but the rest of the team sit deep and are really compact. Because they're so compact, the opposition take risks and try and move the ball forward. Forest then win the ball because they're good defensively, and because they've left the front 4 so high, they are then an attacking threat. They then counter-attack with so much speed and have Chris Wood. No one else in the league has Chris Wood, so that's an advantage. That man cannot stop scoring goals right now. But because the front 4 are playing so well, they don't need to send extra men forward. So even if the attack doesn't work, they're also not vulnerable at the back because they've got so many defenders. It all ties in really nicely. It's kind of this endless cycle of you can't get through Forest, but Forest can get through you whenever they want. That is the endless cycle we've got going on here. And it's why Forest have been so dangerous. It's why they're in the top 4 currently. And hopefully, in my opinion, hopefully, they can sustain this till the end of the season because a spot in the top 4 would be exactly what this Forest team deserves. Nuno Espirito Santo has done such a good job. Just a few years ago, he was sort of written off as a manager, but he has stuck to his ideas, his principles, he's upgraded them, leveled up with Forest, got some really good players, to be fair, a squad that, again, is built for this style of football, and it is working perfectly. I'm a big fan of Nottingham Forest this season, one of my favourite teams to watch because it's pure entertainment, action at both ends, and I absolutely love it. In terms of where they will finish, we'll have to wait and see. I want to hear your predictions in the comments down below. How high will Forest finish? And can they keep hold of these players in the summer? And if so, what could they do next season? Could they level up again? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you could also please subscribe to the channel with notifications on whilst you're there, it would be amazing. Apart from that, I think we're finished there. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.